Hello and welcome to another edition of Ask the Experts here on 570 News Radio. I'm joined today by Faisal Susiwala, recently named as the #1 REMAX agent worldwide in terms of sales volume and number of homes sold as well. Welcome back to the show, Faisal, and thanks for giving us some of your time as well.
Thanks for having me on, Brock.
Listeners, if you're interested in any of the information we discuss over the next hour, please reach out to Faisal. You can start your journey at homeshack.com. You can call him directly 519-624-5555 or by email faisal@homeshack.com. Faisal, it's back to school time for most Canadians as September means back to those routines for families as well. But we know September 4th also means a lot to folks who are focused on the real estate market specifically, as the Bank of Canada is going to be making its next rate announcement. And I'd love to hear your perspective on what we might be seeing that first week of September.
Well, we're very hopeful that September 4th will bring another rate reduction. So this would be the third one. So June 5th, we had a 0.25%. July 24th, we had another 0.25%. And if that pattern follows, we should see another 0.25% as a minimum, hopefully a half. But again, it's all dependent on inflation and politicians and Bank of Canada and all the things that go along with it. Now, the policy rate could dip as low as 3.75% by the end of this year. And if
Okay.
that happens, the projection is that we are gearing up for a very strong spring market. Um, People have been a little gun shy right now, and they're not ready to trigger. They've still been sitting on the sidelines because I think what's happened is they've lost faith in the Bank of Canada to maintain this trajectory of reducing rates, and they don't want to get themselves put in a position where they commit to purchasing something and then the rate goes up before the closing. And we've seen that right across the board. It's been up and down, but I think that there is a consensus amongst everyone now that the rates do need to come down in order to salvage anyone's ability to not only purchase, but to stay in the homes that they own.
So that's a great point because back in July that second rate cut comes through. Economists say they start to see some positives coming from that, but as you're saying, still a lot of people waiting on the sidelines. Do you have any idea of what the numbers have looked like here in the region the last couple of months when it comes to homes sold and what's going on the market as well?
Year over year, we're still down, anywhere from 5 to 7%. We're down in a price. We're also down in activity. We're up in inventory. So, that comes right back to, is this a seller's market or is it a buyer's market? It's clearly a buyer's market right now as a result of the increased inventory. But that's not necessarily a bad thing for sellers because it's all relative. If a seller is going to end up taking less, then potentially they're turning around and buying again, and then they're in a buyer's market. So the opportunities are still there in the market. It's just how you see yourself moving forward.
I know even in our neighborhood, there's some of those houses they've been on the market. It looks coming up to 2 months maybe now. Other houses, the sign goes up and the sold sign is on it within a day or two. Is it does it boil down to being smart about the price you're putting out there?
It's absolutely coming down to price, but it's also coming down to marketing. If your home is not being exposed in the right markets, and as much as a lot of agents and sellers and buyers might be thinking that the GTA traffic has stopped, it really hasn't, because those buyers are still seeking value. And our region, and I've been saying this for years, in my opinion, is still grossly undervalued for what we actually offer here. And it's becoming a little bit more apparent to people. If you go up 35 to 40 minutes east and just hit Milton, for example, you're still paying $1.1 million for a townhome in Milton. And when you drive into Cambridge, Kitchener, Waterloo, a similar townhome built by the same builders that are building in Milton, Mississauga, you're saving 30% right off the top. And when you take into effect the or into consideration the work at home, the amenities that are being offered in our region today, even over last 10 years, the um, arts, the entertainment, the schools, the access to highways, and all of that, this is really a prime location within Ontario to be living in, and people are starting to realize that, and are maybe asking themselves, why are we living in Brampton, Milton, Mississauga, Burlington, Oakville, when we can save 30%? Our kids can live at home and go to university. Cost of living is far less. Insurance is far less. And you still have all the amenities of the big cities in our region. So, I think the growth potential here is still extremely, extremely good.
And I remember you've said it before, your old slogan was, drive 35 minutes, save 35%, and it still stands today. As you said, that idea of everything from go transit to and from Toronto, if that's going to become an all day sort of thing, everyday service, that makes a big impact as well too. And I think you talked about that idea of Brampton, Mississauga. They're we know how quickly they've grown. We know how densely populated they are. Here, if you're in the region, 10 minutes and you can be out in the country. If you're looking for a little bit of peace and quiet, it's a great place to spend your time, either as raising a family, or as you were saying, coming for school. Maybe you come here and you're going to stay here. I know at the same time there's been a lot of new condo projects going on in the region. What do you see happening when it comes to the condo market?
So when we look at condos, we have to look at the types of condo projects that are in the region, and we have to take a very thoughtful approach to why is that condo valued at what it's valued at? As a general rule, when you look at a high rise project, you have to question, am I paying real value for that, or am I
Mhm.
paying future value for that? And what I mean by that is you look across the street from a development today, a high rise development. If you are paying a premium for a pre-construction, then you're overpaying today. Builders are going to hate me saying this, but here's the truth. 10 years ago, you could buy pre-construction at a 10% discount over a resale. All of a sudden, the marketing kicked in to Toronto agents who, and again, I don't want to sound negative, but they absolutely ruined the market. They created this false value proposition to their buyers and quite honestly ripped off their customers by putting them into coaches and limos and in being incentivized by local builders and builders from out of town who saw an opportunity to have these massive openings, grand openings, and you become a platinum broker, and giving these agents these incentives, and the commissions that they were offering were absolutely ridiculous. 50,000, 40,000, pay you up front. Where do you think that money came from? It came from the pockets of the buyer. It came from the deposits that the buyer was paying. And unfortunately, we can drive around in our region and we see projects that are boarded up,
Yep.
cranes that have been dismantled. We read the papers or watch the news feeds, and we can see that projects that were supposed to be the big grand projects are now bankrupt, halted, in receivership. And it's not just a Toronto thing, it's happening here because there was not a thoughtful process. Agents were irresponsible. Buyers thought there was no end to this value. I refused to sell a single condo unit in a high rise in the last 4 years in our region because there was no value, no demand. And when I looked across the street and you could buy that same condo unit at a 40% discount over the pre-construction. If the value is there for the buyer, the value is there in the sense of appreciation over the next 2 years. But you need to buy at the same price that that condo is reselling for today on the market. So if you're paying $600 a square foot for a resale condo today, the pre-construction should be the same. Now, builders will argue that, well, we can't afford to build it at that. You're right. Then don't build it. Stop.
Mhm.
There's no need to build it. This is not a housing affordability solution. This is a profitability solution for builders and developers and greed. And that's what's set in our market. And that is exactly the reason why these condo units are going bankrupt. And this is just the beginning. You're going to see a lot more. The amount of units in GTA that have gone bankrupt, and all of those poor pre-construction fools that signed up for these units are going to have to pay the piper, and they're going to have to walk away from their deposits, and they're going to go bankrupt, and the builders are going to sue them, and the developers are going to sue them if they haven't already gone bankrupt. So it's not a very bright picture out there for those folks. Now, on the stacked townhome type of project, there's a
Right.
value. And you're going to see that value continuing. And there are projects in our region that are viable, but I would stay away from any high-rise projects right now.
Good advice. It's always Uncle Faisal comes through every now and then, and he gets going. And I'm always happy that we've tapped into that. We'll take a quick break here on Ask the Experts. When we come back, signing on the dotted line, what do you need to know? Stay with us here on 570 News Radio. Welcome back to the show. My guest today is Faisal Susiwala, recently named as the #1 REMAX agent worldwide in terms of sales volume and number of homes sold. He's also the author of the book, The Real Deal, Billion-Dollar Real Estate Broker. Listeners, if you'd like a chance to chat with Faisal yourself, you can always start by going to homeshack.com. You can call Faisal directly, 519-624-5555, or through email, faisal@homeshack.com. So, Faisal, many of our listeners might be in that position of getting ready to renew their mortgages in the next couple of months. What are some of the key things to consider before they sign on the dotted line, as it were?
Well, the renewals are coming in right now, and we've talked about this before. Those who bought in 2019 may have had, interest rates as low as 2.5% to 3%. Unfortunately, they're renewing today closer to 5.5% to 6%. So they're essentially doubling their mortgage payments from what they were at. And if they had refinanced in the meantime or had drawn on lines of credit due to increases in equity, then their payments are going to be even greater than that. So a few considerations is look at possible solutions before jumping the gun and say, I got to sell my property. I really do feel that the light at the end of the tunnel is not that far. It may be spring before we see a turnaround here in valuations. And I do believe that the solution lies in the hands of your banker to
Mhm.
give you options to either increase your amortization. So if you're down to 17 or 18 years amortization, or even 20 years, if you've paid 5 years into it, there's a good possibility that you can extend that by another 5 years, which will then reduce the payment, somewhat compensate for the increase in payment that you would have had if you kept your amortization. And just maybe look at locking in for, again, I'm not a mortgage broker, and you've got some great people on your show that can certainly give advice on that. But I would say, a 2 to 3 year lock-in is probably better. And ride that wave until the rates fall to closer to 3%, and then renew for 5 years, and just have that stability. I know that playing the variable game over the years has been profitable for people and has given them an advantage. But in the last 2 years, a lot of those gains have been given back because the rates have just been so high. So be careful on what you're doing. Of course, the stress test is still there to protect you from
Yeah.
over purchasing. But I do believe that the amortization extension is the solution as opposed to feeling that pinch. And remember, it's just for a shorter term. And it'll give you an opportunity to sustain your living and not having to sell your property.
You bring up a good point. Those people that, and I'm sure you've seen them, and they probably come to you to say, "Look, Faisal, we're at our wits' end. The only way for us to move forward is to sell." But with that comes all kinds of other issues. Are you going to rent for a while? Are you going to try and downsize? It seems for a lot of people, it's more like a parallel move than anything else. And you're, as you're saying, that if that might be the last option, but look at all of these other possibilities beforehand.
Yeah, and you don't want to wait till it's too late. You don't want
Yeah.
to wait until your credit rating has been affected because that will then also cause you to pay a premium on a renewal. Or your banker might just say, well, listen, your credit's gone down the tubes here, so we're not going to give you an extension on your mortgage or renewal on the mortgage. There are other opportunities that are short-term solutions, which may involve getting a shorter-term loan just to help you get through the next year or 2 years. I don't recommend that unless you're really in a bind. And you may want to look at a blanket payment solution as opposed to a monthly payment solution, whereby you're getting a perhaps a second mortgage to help you cover your costs for the next year or 2 years in anticipation that the values will go up. And again, these are all going to be based on your comfort level and what your risk tolerance is, and whether or not you can stomach the idea of having a second mortgage at a higher rate. But it might get you into a season or a sales year where the market has turned around and you're able to exit at that point, or hopefully renew and envelop the second mortgage into one mortgage.
Right. Uh, we know we've also talked about people going as far as, taking in a student. And, that might have been something that, 20 or 30 years ago was just seen as, doing your part for the community. But these days, the student is going to be covering that difference in your mortgage for the next little while. But with that, I would think comes, again, it's a change to your own, it's your home, right? You're taking in basically a stranger at the end of the day, they are going to be helping you financially, but you have to, I don't think that's for everybody. You've got to be fairly flexible when it comes to being able to take on those other possibilities as well.
Yeah, the room rental might get you $700 or $800 per month, but you are sharing your home with someone at that point. The other option, of course, is to look at taking out a loan, possibly spending 40 or $50,000 to create an apartment in your home, a separate entrance, egress windows. You have to make it safe. It needs to be responsible, a housing accommodation. And that, the ROI on that could be as high as 17 or $1,800 a month if you're
Mm.
creating a suite. And we know that the region has now allowed additional suites in single family home locations. So look into what the regulation is, what your zoning is, and what is allowed in your neighborhood. And before throwing in the towel and giving up on home ownership altogether, maybe give up your basement and create a unit down there.
If we look at it on the flip side, we know that some people have decided to sit on the sidelines and wait to purchase a home as well. Rates were climbing and all of those things as well. Now that we're starting to see some of this decline in rates, what would you say if someone was in the market today for purchasing a home? What's the best strategy these days if they're going out and looking?
Everything is on sale right now. And I can tell you that if you're thinking about entering the market in the next 24 months, this is probably one of the best times to consider getting into the market, especially coming into the fall. And the reason I say that, yes, rates are higher than what we'd like them to be at, but the savings, it far outweighs the additional payment you're going to make per month. As long as you can afford and you can tighten your belt a little bit and focus on making your mortgage payments and not spending money on other luxury items, then I think you're going to come out way further ahead. Because if we look at, let's just say you're paying 2% more than what the rates were, that may translate into 12 to $15,000 more in interest payments over the next 2 years on the average price of a home. But the cost savings on your purchase is probably going to be 7 to 10% on the average price of the home. So if you look at the average price of the home in our region, and let's call it $850,000, if you're saving $85,000, but you're spending $15,000 more in interest, I would take that deal all day long.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's where you have to sort of say, okay, I'm going to make some sacrifices. I might not take this vacation this year. I may not go and buy that brand new car. I may not be able to spend some money on luxuries and features that I want in my life. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend that money on home ownership. So really look at that. And I'm encouraging people right now to look at all the options. And again, we talked about pre-construction earlier. If there are pre-construction projects in our region, and there are, that allow you to purchase something today that closes in 1 year or closes in 18 months, but the price of that pre-construction project is equal or less than what you would pay for a resale unit, it's an absolute no-brainer. Buy the unit. I'm personally buying as an investor pre-construction townhomes that are stacked townhomes in Kitchener and in Waterloo
Yep.
because they're not closing for 12 to 18 months. So I'm anticipating riding the appreciation curve for that 1 year. If you're in a position to come up with 5% or 10% deposit, then you're able to buy one of these units and wait until the closing date. You have to be responsible. You have to make sure you have your financing in place, have all your approvals in place, but make sure that you look at the value. Is it the same price or less than what resale is? If the answer is yes, then it makes sense to buy something like that today.
Great advice. Great advice, and great point to end the first half of the show on. We'll take a quick break. We'll get an update from the 570 News Center. When we come back, make sure you do your homework on the biggest purchase of your life. Stay with us here on 570 News Radio. Welcome back to the show today. My guest, Faisal Susiwala, recently named as the #1 REMAX agent worldwide in terms of sales volume and number of homes sold. If you'd like a chance to chat with Faisal yourself, you can start by going to homeshack.com. You can also call Faisal directly, 519-624-5555, or through email, faisal@homeshack.com. So, Faisal, no one's a big fan of homework necessarily, but I would think that homework is extremely important before prospective buyers go and make what might possibly be the biggest purchase of their lives. What should you be doing? That sort of that background prep before you make that purchase.
Well, first of all, make sure you have stability. So your relationship needs to be stable. Your job needs to be stable. You need to feel comfortable that you're going to be gainfully employed throughout this whole process. You need to speak to your financial advisor to ensure that before you start home shopping, that you know how much you're able to spend, that your credit has been checked, that there's nothing that you need to clear up. Maybe it was an old debt that never got cleared up that needs to be accounted for, and it could be something as silly as a few missed cell phone payments that affects your credit, and you need to fix all of that so that when you do find something, you're not panicking at the last minute and having to extend conditions. Make sure you have your down payment in place, and then do the homework on what you're buying. If you're buying resale, make sure you have it inspected. Make sure you have done all of the checks and balances there so that you don't buy something and all of a sudden your furnace breaks down, December 23rd. So, those are some of the things that you want to do to mitigate any negativity on your purchase. And then just really look at value, research, do some comparables. When I list a home, I will often look at homes that have sold in the neighborhood, homes that have sold on the street, historical data of what the values were in 2022. Apply a factor to that to say how much did the market drop. look at the assessed value of that property, apply a multiple to the assessed value. This is what you pay your property taxes on. And there's a
Right.
scientific approach to coming up with a value. There's no reason that you wouldn't do that when you're buying a home. You can ask your realtor to say, listen, I want you to do the research as if you were selling this home today to show me what did the neighborhood sell for? What did other homes on the street sell for? What did similar homes sell for? What did these folks buy it for? When did they buy it? What was it worth in 2022? What's the assessed value? What is the multiple to that assessed value that you're adding to it? Because simply saying the seller wants X amount of dollars, we should offer $25,000 less is a silly way to purchase a property. You need to do your homework. You need the people that are advising you to be competent, that they know the research that needs to be done in order to give you proper advice before you start signing off on a purchase, because you don't want to buy the home and then find out that you either overpaid or you overlooked crucial facts.
And from a real estate perspective as well too, they're extremely important in that whole process. But after the dust is settled, it's up to you to know how much you're going to be paying for hydro, every month. What's the water bill going to look like? You can get that information, or at least get an idea of that information before you put yourself in out there. I know, you watch these home shows where they're showing properties to people, and I always laugh when they show properties to people and it's there, well, this is outside my budget. But well, if it's outside your budget, then you should be pulling back, because you've already, if you've already done your homework and you said we can afford this amount of home, this is what our monthly payments would be, or biweekly, or whatever it happens to be. And I like that point you said about stability, right? Like, if you're going into this as a couple, as a family, you've got to make sure that everything is, you're all on the same page, because it is, in most cases, that largest purchase of your life. And you want to be, as you said, not going to the bank and then all of a sudden being disappointed and saying, yeah, we got to let this one go. Know that ahead of time and rule those out before you go, maybe even before you start looking at some of those, because you don't want to live that your life thinking, oh yeah, well, we settled for this house, right? It's like, this is what we can afford right now. Down the road, we'll be able to look at something else as well.
Yeah, and Brock, you make a great point there about getting the utility bills and that ahead of time, because you're going to get sticker shock if you haven't been paying utilities, or if you've been paying shared utilities, or if you're in an inclusive environment in a condo where water is included, hydro is included. All of a sudden, you go into your own home and you're getting these massive bills. So get the actual bills from the seller on what they've paid over the last 12 months. And it's as simple as making a phone call to their utility provider and saying, I want my last 12 months. Rates have gone up significantly. So it's something very, very serious to take into consideration, because it could add three, four, $500 a month to your cost of living.
If we go to the sort of the other end of the spectrum, and you've got people, and we've talked about this before, that you've been at this a while. You've worked with people who have bought their first home, their second, or maybe their third home. They, now they're helping out their kids get their home. And it may be that you're dealing with those people who are looking to downsize. I would think that that can be a really daunting task for people who have accumulated, for lack of a better word, stuff over the years. When you walk in, what sort of advice do you have on, I don't want to use the term decluttering, but if someone's going from a 2,000 square foot home to an 1,100 square foot apartment, or whatever it happens to be, you don't want those things sitting in storage. What's your advice? What's the best way to make that move as seamlessly as possible?
Well, you know what? I think decluttering is the right word, and de-stinking your house is another a good term. And cleaning your house. I am shocked at the number of times I am called in to do an evaluation on a home, and the booking was made 2 weeks ahead, or a week ahead, or even 3 days ahead. So you've got a realtor coming to your home. You know that they're going to be giving you an evaluation. You would think that you would want to present it in its best light, so that value will reflect the condition of your home. And I'm shocked at the number of homes that I walk into that have completely avoided even taking a vacuum to the carpet or taking a mop to the floors or just wiping things down. Absolutely heartbreaking to see a homeowner living like that and then expecting to get top dollar for their home. So clean up, make it smell nice, declutter all the junk that you have that you've been accumulating. And I say this to people often that when you get an agreement to purchase and sale on your and you are actually selling your home, you're going to have to pack up. You're going to have to move all that stuff out of your house. You're going to have to leave in a very clean manner for it to close. So why not do all those things ahead of time and get the advantage of the value that that's going to bring you? You're going to have to do it anyways at the end. But you've done all of this. Now you've homes are purchased on an emotional, subjective level. Although it's the most expensive investment that most people will ever make in their lives, they base it on emotion. They base it on sense of how they feel, how it looks, how it smells. And if any of those things are crossed off, it's going to impact the bottom line for the seller. So it's so important to present it in its best state. Doing the touch-ups, making sure that if there's maintenance that hasn't been done, clean your filter, vacuum around your furnace, get rid of the cobwebs, that are around the house. Focus on the exterior as well, especially this time of year when people are walking around. If you've got all kinds of dirt and junk all around your property, clean it up. Fix your gardens. First impressions matter. So all of these things need to be addressed before I would say you even call your realtor. Think about all those things that you should do because as a realtor, we're still human. We're walking into a home, and if I have to, unstick my socks off of your floor, then that's going to reflect in my value to you.
Right. Right. Good idea. And you're right that that idea of it is an emotional purchase, but when the time comes to sell and it's hard for you to maybe wrap your head around it, it's not your home anymore. This is going to be someone else's. And it's interesting. There's a home that just came up for sale on our street, and like most nosy neighbors, what do? You go on to realtor.ca and you see what's going on. The neat thing about it was that the realtor had posted photos. It was obviously staged, but they had posted photos of the rooms completely bare and then also with a staged setting. So for those people who want to be able to look at it and think, yeah, okay, I can see this is where the TV is going to go and this is the couch and that sort of thing. Not someone else's view necessarily of what it should be. And I think that that might be helpful to a lot of people to say that it's like a blank canvas. This is what's going to be available to me when I move in there.
Oh, absolutely. And what you're referring to is exactly what I'm doing. I would rather have the house completely emptied out or at least minimal items in there. And what we do is virtual staging. So
Mhm.
we can create the most beautiful environment in any home. And if you think about it from a sales perspective, the idea of staging is to create beautiful pictures to entice a buyer to enter the home. Now, when they
Right.
enter the home, they don't necessarily need to see it done up to the nines. At that point, they can visualize their couch and whatnot. Of course, the virtual staging is still on their iPad or on their phones that they can refer to say, oh, well, where would the couch go, or where would the dining room go? So these are all options that are available, and with technology that we have today, this whole virtual staging thing has really taken off, and I certainly use it to my advantage to increase the flow of buyers that will be attracted to my listings as a result of presenting it in that light. But when they arrive there, it may not be the same as what they saw. But like you said, it gives them a clean canvas to look at and say, okay, I can picture myself and I can picture my furniture in here.
There you go. On the cutting edge of technology all the time. He started off with a fax machine, folks, but now we're in the digital age. Uh, we'll take a final break here on Ask the Experts. When we come back, the best time to invest in real estate. You're listening to Ask the Experts here on 570 News Radio. Welcome back to the show. My guest today, Faisal Susiwala, also known as the top real estate broker in the world for REMAX. Listeners, if you'd like a chance to chat with Faisal yourself, you can start by going to homeshack.com. You can also call Faisal directly, 519-624-5555, or through email, faisal@homeshack.com. So, Faisal, I know we've talked before about the benefits of investing in real estate. And for those listeners that might be considering getting into the market right now, um, is there, I mean, and we've said it before, the best time was 5 years ago, but is it a great time for someone to get in right now?
There's always an opportunity in every year, in every economy, at every interest rate to become an investor, to invest in the market. And right now, we're at a very unique time where inventory levels are very high, interest rates are starting to come down, and it's become a buyer's market. Then you add the seasonal factor to it, because in the fall, we typically see values declining a little bit, and that gives an opportunity. Then you see pre-construction projects that are out there that are actually representing good value. So again, we talked about in an earlier session here about doing your homework. So investigating the right projects, what the value is the value of the new construction the same as resale? If the answer is yes, then absolutely it's worthwhile. And I talk a lot about investing and whatnot in my book. And I basically take a page out of my own book every fall, and I go out and I look at opportunities to invest my own money and invest on behalf of my family, because we're trying to create a situation for our young people, our kids, where they'll have an opportunity to have home ownership and build some wealth. And really, mom and dad need to really look at their position, financial position, to think about, how do I get through retirement? How do I have some passive income? How do I leave something behind for my kids when I'm gone? So all of those things only happen when you sort of look through um, life through an investor lens and say, okay, is this the right time? If you built up some equity in your home, certainly this is a good time to extract some of it, understanding that the rates are going to be higher, but also understanding that when the rates start coming down, for every quarter to 0.5%, we'll probably see a 5% increase in the values of properties. So if, as an investor, that's a pretty good return to be investing for right now.
You mentioned that idea of this it's a passive income, and as people are aging, or even if they're younger and they're busy with their careers and so on, I would think that some people might be hesitant to get into investing in income or in real estate for fear of thinking, I just don't have the time. But we've talked about this before as well too. There are property management organizations out there that can really ease your mind. You invite them to be a part of the whole solution, so that you can you don't you can be sort of at arm's length, that instead of being there for the day-to-day sort of things.
Oh, absolutely. There are property managers, there are realtors. So, you need to do, again, we come back to doing homework, right? So, credit check, reference check, employment check, history of where they were living. If they sold their home, you can pull up. I mean, there's so many resources today. You could pull up on House Sigma or on MLS or on realtor.ca. What did their home look like? So don't be afraid of the tenant. Everybody seems to think that tenants are these big bad wolves that live in your homes and they're going to blow things up. If you do your homework ahead of time, there are some wonderful people out there that need housing, that are starting their lives or relocating to our region, just need a year or 2 years to get a footing in, and they're willing to live in your home, respect your home, pay your rent on time, build a life for themselves. So don't discount that. We manage over 115 properties. And I can tell you that it's a pleasure working with the tenants that we have,
Yep.
because we did our homework. We did our reference checks. We did all of our due diligence ahead of time before. I would rather keep a property vacant for a month or two and put the right tenant in
Mhm.
than to put someone in that's got first and last and a U-Haul truck ready to move in today because there may be a problem getting them out. And that might be the only money you'll ever see is the first and last.
That's not enough if they're planning on sticking around for a while. Uh, you mentioned the book, The Real Deal, Billion-Dollar Real Estate Broker. I know that you talk about investing, really, you've talked from right from the heart about investing some of your earnings into real estate, and you focus on the idea of scaling down, looking at what you know and using that knowledge. When you look around the region, you mentioned that you do this in the fall. How easy is it for you these days to sort of spot those diamonds in the rough when it comes to investing?
I'll tell you, it's not even diamonds in the rough. You could pretty much take a dart and hit it on the MLS board today, and I can tell you pretty much everything that is on the market, again, within reason, do your research, is a good deal. Every property on the market today, and mark my words, and let's talk about this in 2 years and look back at what we were saying today. Any property that is for sale today is on sale. It is a good deal. It is worth buying if you can afford to deploy some of your money. If you can afford to take some of the money off of the stock market or wherever you're investing and willing to diversify your investment into real estate, I really feel confident and I'm practicing what I'm preaching. I'm out there purchasing pre-construction stacked townhomes in our region today because I see the value. I see the value in waiting for that to be completed in the next 12 to 18 months. And I see the appreciation there. So there's no question, but that doesn't just go for pre-construction. And this is not a plug to buy pre-construction. This is a plug to invest your money in any reasonable real estate opportunity that presents itself today, because I do believe that when the rates go down, which they will, we're going to be looking back and saying we should have bought when the rates were, because the value of purchasing today uh, and the appreciation far outweighs the 2 years of higher interest rates that you're going to pay.
And we've said this many times before. It's a long game. There was one section in the book where you talk about, if you want to talk to me about investing in silver or buying a new Van Gogh, I'm not really the guy to talk to. But when it comes to, if there's a young person out there, and they're like, you know what, I've committed some money, and I think that I'm looking at this. There are ways to get involved, and as Faisal said, mark his words. 2 years from now, you'll be happy that you were paying attention. Um, and I know that you're willing to go in and talk with young people and share your ideas. And that was the sort of the beginnings of the book, was to do that, take all of your experience and pull that all together. But I would think that there's always an audience for the things that you want to be talking about.
Absolutely. And young people are really, and we talk about financial literacy. Look, I have nephews, I have my own kids. I tell them, stay at home as long as you can. As long as mom and dad aren't kicking you out, stay at home as long as you can. That don't buy a property because you want to move out and have a good time and have parties at your new house. Buy a property because that's going to create a future for you. So stay at home, buy a property, rent it out, enjoy the appreciation. And when you're ready to move out and be on your own, then you have the option of moving into that property. You have the option of extracting the equity from that property and buying another home with your partner or for yourself, however you want to do that. But get your investment on. Don't wait. Start early, invest often, always put 20% of your income aside for investment purposes, because that 20% that you put down will create a 20% down payment. So you avoid all of that CMHC premiums and whatnot. But start investing. And if you can't do it on your own, ask family members to join you. Partner up with like-minded people that share common goals with you. But don't wait. It's never a bad time to deploy your money into real estate. It's tangible. You can see it, you can feel it, you can live in it, and no one's creating more land.
Love it. We're going to end right there. Faisal, I want to thank you for coming on the show again today. Always a pleasure to chat with you, and thanks for giving us your time today.
Thanks for having me on. My pleasure.